What do you say?
Hello everyone, it's Saltyman here again. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about buffs in Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, it's going to be a bit difficult because there's so many to cover, but first we'll be going over leveling up the buffs and their secondary effects and these buff tiers. So, you can see I actually did manage to equip 7 buffs here, so there's a few things we should note about these. You can see some of these target nearby allies. You'll have quite a few that are target one ally, and then a few that are target self. So you can see some of these have these buff tiers on their effects, like this is potential up to 4, but this is only level 4, oops. So that could have gone to level 5, so it would go up to level 5. So I have actually found a few general rules with these. Buffs that are single target will go up to level 5. Buffs that target your whole squad, like nearby allies, these will only go up to level 3. So there's a few other differences with this too. You can see this is gravity resist up 3, but then the secondary cooldown bonuses, you can get buff tier plus 1 or 2. So this can actually still go up to tier 5. So the general rule for these buff tiers is Tier 2 is twice as strong as Tier 1, and Tier 5 is 5 times as strong, so obviously these tiers have a very big effect, especially on buffs like this, which are actually resist, because obviously 50% resist is a lot more than 10%. So for other ones it does not matter as much, like evasion up, this just raises it by a certain score, so this is actually still fairly useful, even though you do not get the extra buff tiers on it. So you can see this one does restore hit points, and it affects everyone, and you can spam this one. So this can actually be pretty good situationally. So the levels on this, they do raise the additional effect a bit, but they mostly just increase the healing amount and the cooldown on this. So leveling them up doesn't always raise the tiers, it can have a few different effects, but for most of them, it just does raise the tier. Some of them it will raise multiplies, like, oh, this one it doesn't raise the TP again, so. Where is it? Oh, I don't have that equipped now, so. Okay, well, we'll go over the other buffs and what happens when you level them up later. But this one too, this removes debuffs, so that effect will never actually level up. But the cooldown will go down and the amount as heals go up. So yeah, leveling these up can have different effects, but for most of the ones that are just a straight buff, it will just level up the tier of the buff. So yeah, the thing to remember is most of the ones that are single target will normally go up to level 5. But for ones that don't affect anyone, you want to pay attention to if you can actually raise the tier or not, because that will have a huge effect on the level of the buff. Now, your teammates can use buffs too, but this is also important because they're not good at managing their arts. So every once in a while they might get secondary cooldown bonus, but if they're using buffs that are only at like tier level 3, they're almost certain to always use it at that tier. So if you can find higher level buff tiers naturally on your squad mates, it's better to use those because they're not the smartest at using this combat system. We'll go through all of the different buffs here and what they do, but there is a few you might not have right away. Like, you may know there's some arts you get from doing missions for squad mates, but I do know what most of those are, so we'll go over the interesting ones. So you can see this one's just physical resist up. There's actually one art for every resist. So this will basically be either 10 or 50 at tier 5. So these can be quite good, but you can stack these with auras, but there's not multiple physical resist up buffs. There's one of every element, so those ones are pretty straightforward. Now this one is very interesting. So there is 2 buffs, I believe, that grant Supercharge. So Supercharge actually increases the damage of your hit, but this only works with the base damage. So I'm not sure there's actual multiplier, but I believe at level 1 it's like 100% bonus, but because of the way the hit scaling works, this only works well on attacks with really high damage per hit, or even better on single hits. Because yeah, it does only affect the first hit, but there's a few odd cases, like this works with 0-0, but that's a skill you get later. Now you can see this grants total evasion during execution. There's only a few things that have this, but you might get power dive early. So what this means is during the animation of the skill, or the art, sorry, because power dive you actually like dive and slide along the ground, you're actually invincible during the art. So if you time this properly, you can use it to dodge certain things, but power dive is a bit of a funny skill. So there is one that uses Supercharge that you just kind of spin your javelin, but then you don't get the evasion of it. But obviously it is a lot quicker, so this evasion can be useful for dodging certain strong attacks, but it can be hard to manage. These are all debuffs. Here we go. So this one just boosts allies TP, but you can see this targets other allies. So this doesn't actually target yourself, and at level 1 this is only 1000 TP, so it's not worth it that much. This is a better skill to give your teammates actually, because at level 5 it will give everyone else 2000 TP. So it's not great on yourself, but can be good to give your teammates if they do have access to it. Now this is another resist. Some of these will be self-target, some are nearby allies. All of these actually do go up to tier 5, at least. I'm fairly certain. I did test them all, but I might have missed one. Now, barrier's a bit interesting too. This is actually just straight damage resistance, or damage reduction. So at level 1 it would be 10%, at level 5 it's 50%, so that's obviously very useful, but you still do need to pay attention to your resistances. If you have high resistances and barrier, it will do a lot, but barrier on its own won't always keep you alive. Now this is one interesting buff. There's a few skills that actually enhance the effects of barrier, so this can actually really help. But some buffs like that you do need to kind of build around, and then obviously you're sacrificing skills, so those can be situational. Oops. Now this one's another fairly interesting one. So remove debuffs, there's quite a few buffs that do that that should be fairly straightforward. It removes all debuffs on you, but the only thing, certain disables will actually prevent you from using these. But a lot of other situations where you can't do much else, you can still remove your debuffs. So these can be very important at higher levels when you see more debuffs, but you can actually reflect debuffs, which we'll go over another time, or if you evade the attack, you won't actually get hit by the debuff. And then you can see with an aura, it consumes your aura to yield TP, so this can be okay earlier when you don't have a lot of TP since it removes debuffs anyways, but generally you probably only want to use one aura anyways, so we'll go over those more later, but basically you can only have one aura active at one time, and they cost a lot of battle points to level up, and there's usually not very good synergy. Like, maybe for defensive stance and offensive stance I've seen people use that, but it's still probably not the optimal way to build your character. Now, this is another interesting one. This grants critical power, so this increases the damage of your critical hits. Now, critical hit chance is pretty low in this game, and critical hit damage is normally pretty low. But with critical power, you do a lot of damage on critical hits. So basically you need to combine critical power with critical hit chance to actually have a noticeable effect. But there is some auras and other effects that actually do increase your critical hit chance. Sorry. So these can be quite useful on certain builds, particularly the dual swords and dual guns. Now, this one's quite interesting. So you half your current TP, or hit points, sorry, to boost your TP. So this does kind of work on certain dual sword skills, but this can also be used outside of combat. You can actually just target an enemy and use this and then run away, and your health will start healing again. So you can actually use this to boost your TP outside of combat, so this one's actually fairly interesting. I like using this one quite a bit actually. This is another one, just grants critical power, but this one also boosts your TP. So when you level this skill up, it will not only level up the tier of the critical power, but also the amount of TP you gain. So this one's quite useful. Now we get into some more interesting ones. So, okay, sorry about that. I didn't want to make any mistake when I was talking about Ghostwalker because DK is a pretty important skill, so I decided to just equip it. So you can see mine is level 5, so this does have a very long cooldown, and the way decoy works is it will block a certain amount of hits. So at level 5 it blocks 5 hits, but you can see it does have secondary cooldown and tertiary cooldown bonus. So this increases effect duration, but that's not as helpful because it only blocks a few hits, and in some situations you're getting hit a lot. But if you have this lower levels, it can help a lot. Or you can actually go up to tier 6 on any buffer. It doesn't go up to tier 7, so that's kind of funny. But it would say +1 and +2 when you have a level 5 skill. That took me a while to get used to, that they only go up to tier 6. But anyway, so if you do get it to tier 6, it will block 6 hits. But the main issue with skills like this is the cooldown on them. So to actually have this up the whole time, you would have to manage it really well or find a way to get the cooldown or the cooldown down. So yeah, you can do that with Overdrive or certain skills later, but if you're just using this on its own, or in its situations where enemies are hitting you a lot, it's not going to do much if you can't get the cooldown down. Now, Ghost Factor as well. Okay, so you can see Ghost Factor as well. When you go to level it up, it only goes to DK 1. So this does affect all your teammates, and it has a lower cooldown. And if you get it max level at tertiary cooldown, it actually will be decoy tier 5. But this also does have TP cost. So if you're trying to spam it a lot, even if you get the cooldown down, you do need to find a way to raise your TP a lot. So this can be pretty problematic because you may have Primer equipped. So this does boost your TP quite a lot and you can spam it, but it's only 200 every time. So yeah, it can be hard to support any buffs or arts that actually use TP and use them the whole time. Now, the other interesting one from this class is Combat Limbo. So Effect Stasis makes you immune to the effects of most debuffs. You'll still see the debuff on you, but most of them won't actually have an effect. So you can see this doesn't last very long, and it has a long cooldown as well. So you do want to get this to secondary or tertiary cooldown for the effect duration, because this is one of the longest cooldowns in the game, but it is a fairly useful skill. Although if you're using Decoy, it will actually block debuffs as well. The hit actually has to hit you. Okay, sorry about that delay there, but we'll continue with the other ones now. Okay, so this skill art is extremely useful, obviously. It targets everyone and it grants ranged accuracy up and ranged attack up. So not only is this very good on its own, but you can combine this with auras and other skills to make it a lot more powerful. And the accuracy up can be very good in some situations, and if everyone on your squad's using ranged, obviously it's that much better. So this can be a very good skill. Art, sorry. I'm still not used to that. So here's another one, critical power. So yeah, there are some buffs that overlap. Here's one. This is just Supercharge on its own. Another Purge skill, but this one restores hit points. More barrier. Gravity resist up. So here's one that boosts potential. So this is very good if you're using a potential build, because it actually boosts it by 50% at level 5. So this actually will have a massive effect on your TP arts. So if you can combine skills like this, or find one that raises potential, it will stack with this one even more effectively. So this is actually a multiplier of 50%, not adding a straight number. That's the difference. It will either say raise or boost. A boost is a percentage. A raise is an actual number. Here's electric resist up. So Astral Heal is a bit interesting. It does heal a lot of hit points, but it also costs 1,000 tension points. And you can use it to heal skills, so if you're using Photon Saber anyways, actually, this can be okay to level up once or twice. If you're not using any other TP arts, you might have a bit of extra TP, so some of the healing buffs can be okay earlier in the game, but you normally don't want to rely on the ones where you have to manually heal. It's better to use auras for healing, which we'll talk more on later. And here's more remove debuffs. Okay, sorry about that, we're back. So, actually I just watched my own video to make sure we covered everything. So, there's just one other buff I wanted to cover really quick. This one's actually really abusable. Now this is Essence Exchange. You get this from one of Yelv's affinity missions, so this switches your current hit point and tension point amount. So if you have a lot of tension points, this actually can be used as a quick heal in battle, but the main use of this is actually to instantly max your tension points. So you can use this outside of combat on non-aggressive enemies, and you'll instantly get max tension points. Then you can just run away, and as soon as it breaks sight, you will start healing really quickly. So even if you don't use the Photon Saber, you can abuse this by just throwing it on. But another thing you can do is you can use this and then just use Astral Heal to heal yourself up a bit so you won't die in one hit. So say you heal say you switch like 7,000 into tension points, you can use this, and then it only costs 1,000, but when you're at 1 health, it will really help. So one thing about Essence Exchange, if you have massive hit points and not a lot of tension points, you'll still be left with at least 1 hit point, so this won't outright kill you. So yeah, if you use this outside of combat, it's very abusable. Now, I probably should have touched on increasing buff tiers earlier, but yeah. Buffs can go up to tier 6, that's the cap for them. Now there's a few other ways to increase these actually, that's through soul voices, but since there is a cap, once your buffs are leveled up, this is not as useful. But you can actually switch some of your soul voices over, so if you actually get those reaction commands, this can increase some of your buff effects, but the main way to do this at lower levels is actually to get soul voices off your teammates. Like you can see, Elma has 1 that increases buff arts. So different teammates have some, one doesn't actually have any. So yeah, you might want to be aware because you can't change your teammates, your squad mates' soul voices, but generally you just want to level up your own buffs. You don't want to be relying on soul voices or anything. The secondary or tertiary cooldown bonuses are good, but since it's capped at tier 6, that's not a huge increase from tier 6, so those are actually more useful for the extended duration on most buffs. But on certain ones, like the elemental resist ones, having it at tier 6 can push you to immunity, so there's some specific situations where it helps in both ways. But there's definitely a much larger difference between tier 3 and 5 than there is between 5 and 6. So yeah, hopefully this clears up any confusion about buffs. I'm actually glad we managed to go through them all. So hopefully this helps anyone, and I'll see you next time. We'll start going over the auras and debuffs and how to actually make some builds. Thanks a lot. Bye.